Sony's mid-range offering has long been anchored by the X90L, a 2023 model celebrated for its punchy HDR brightness and balanced performance. Now, in 2025, Sony has introduced the BRAVIA 5, swapping the X90L's full-array local dimming for a mini LED backlight with up to 6 times more dimming zones. On paper, that sounds like an easy upgrade, but when you pit the BRAVIA 5 against its predecessor side by side, the result isn't so clear-cut. Hi, I'm Marco from Ratings.com. We spent hours comparing the two on our test bench, and here's everything you need to know to pick the right Sony for your living room. Both TVs sport a glossy VA panel with a native 120Hz refresh rate, two HDMI 2.1 ports for 4K at 120Hz gaming, Dolby Vision support, and Sony's Cognitive XR processor driving Google TV OS. The X90L relies on a full-array local dimming system, with 88 zones on the 65-inch model, while the BRAVIA 5 upgrades to mini LED with 384 dimming zones in its 65-inch model. Both offer hands-free Google Assistant, an S-Center speaker input for Sony soundbar integration, and an ATSC 3.0 tuner for over-the-air 4K broadcasts. So, outside of those dimming zones, pretty similar. But is the performance similar? The BRAVIA 5 is the more recent model, and therefore it should naturally be much brighter, right? Well, no. When watching HDR content, the X90L delivers noticeably stronger peak highlights. It's not that close either. Our measurements show the X90L hitting more than 1200 nits in a 10% window, and it's capable of maintaining it too. In a 25% window, it sustains 950 nits, and in a 100% bright window, the TV doesn't dip below 715 nits. Overall, specular highlights stand out vividly and maintain an impactful presentation across most scenes. The BRAVIA 5, despite its mini LED backlight, posts only mediocre HDR brightness. Its highlights lack the pop you'd expect as they peak at just about 800 nits on a 25% window and dip below 500 nits on an entirely bright screen. In real content, the BRAVIA 5 is consistently dimmer than the X90L too. Overall, this leaves HDR content feeling less dynamic on the newer model. When it comes to contrast, both the X90L and the BRAVIA 5 aim for deep, bold blacks, but they go about it differently. As mentioned, the X90L employs a full-array local dimming backlight with 88 zones on the 65-inch model. In practice, this delivers an okay contrast ratio. Dark scenes look black in most cases, even if the zones are relatively large. You'll notice mild blooming around subtitles or bright objects on dark backgrounds. And as moving highlights cross from one zone to the next, you'll notice the leading edge of the highlight looking darker, with a trail behind it. With slower highlights, there's noticeable flicker as they move across the screen. Sony's BRAVIA 5 has a mini LED panel, packing nearly 5 times more dimming zones into the same 65-inch footprint. Still, it's not nearly as good as you'd think when it comes to blooming, due to how the TV handles its dimming zones. In complex scenes, such as a star field across the sky, the TV simply doesn't dim the zone where the individual star is, instead relying on its native contrast ratio. This has the benefit of not crushing the star here, and there isn't any blooming. But in turn, the image looks a bit washed out, like in this image. Keep in mind that this image is vastly overexposed, so it doesn't look nearly this bad in person. The bright dot in the middle is a mouse cursor on a black background, and the halo around it comprises the dimming zones that aren't being dimmed. So, does that mean that the BRAVIA 5's black levels aren't much of an improvement over the X90L? Well, not quite. First, it has better lighting zone transitions. They're noticeably clearer on the BRAVIA, with less haloing and dimming of the edges than on the older model. Second, while the two TVs' contrast performance turns out to be similar when measured, here the numbers don't tell the whole story. Although scenes with pure blacks and large bright elements look almost the same on both TVs, darker elements, near blacks, are noticeably deeper on the BRAVIA 5 in some real scenes. Still, overall, it's a rather disappointing performance for a TV with almost 5 times the dimming zones of its predecessor. Alright, back to brightness, now in SDR. The BRAVIA 5 holds its own in SDR, with very good peak brightness that cuts through glare. However, just like in HDR, the X90L pulls ahead, as it has amazing SDR brightness. This thing is bright. This makes it a much better choice than the BRAVIA 5 for well-lit rooms. Yes, both struggle with direct reflections. Lamps or windows opposite the screen are pretty darn distracting. But the X90L's extra nits help it maintain a cleaner image when ambient light is flowing in. Ultimately, the older X90L is simply the brighter TV, no matter the content. When it comes to color vibrancy in HDR, the X90L again holds a small advantage. Its brighter panel and superb PQ EOTF tracking ensures colors are more vibrant than on the dimmer BRAVIA 5, and it does so without losing any of its dark, saturated color prowess. Plus, the X90L is also much more accurate out of the box. It's exceptionally accurate, in fact. We aren't joking, even purists could forego calibrating this thing. It's that good. The BRAVIA? Not so good. Blues are greatly overrepresented in lighter shades of gray, while reds are underrepresented. You know what this means, the BRAVIA's color temperature is way too cold out of the box. Plus, when it comes to colors, the BRAVIA has far more tone mapping errors across all colors than the X90L. Frankly, when it comes to HDR accuracy, it's no contest, the X90L dominates. Now, finally a win for the BRAVIA 5. A small one, but a win is a win. The newer set has slightly better HDR brightness accuracy than the older one. Yes, near blacks and highlights are a bit darker than intended on the BRAVIA, but overall, it follows the curve very closely. The X90L is also very accurate here, but near blacks are noticeably raised, and some of the brighter highlights are a tad darker than they should be. Still impressive though, but not quite as good as the BRAVIA. We have less to say about these TVs' SDR colors, as they're just as colorful there. The X90L is again more accurate here too, but not by much. Still, that's just one more area where the older set has the edge. Sony's XR processor shines in both models, providing superb upscaling of low resolution and heavily compressed content. The BRAVIA 5 earns a high mark for its gradient handling after calibration, with only minor banding in dark greens and blues. The X90L matches that performance, delivering very smooth gradients and exceptional low-quality content smoothing. In everyday viewing, you'll struggle to tell the processors apart. Still, we're here to nitpick, so nitpick we shall. We found the BRAVIA 5 to be a bit better when it comes to cleaning up macro blocking from low bitrate content. Yeah, barely, but still, we've got to give the BRAVIA its props where we can. For gamers, both TVs support 4K at 120Hz with VRR, G-Sync and HDMI 4 in VRR, and offer a responsive gaming experience. But here, we have our first big win for the BRAVIA 5, as its input lag at 60 and 120Hz is much lower than the X90L's. Will most people notice it? Probably not, since 9.5 milliseconds at 120Hz is still pretty darn low. But if you're looking for every possible competitive advantage, then the BRAVIA is the better pick. Well, it would be if its pixel transitions weren't so slow. It's blurry no matter the refresh rate. The X90L isn't much better, but is a bit faster in all transitions. Still, neither TV will scratch the itch for competitive gamers. If that's you, why are you shopping for a Sony TV anyway? Other manufacturers now have up to 165Hz support at 4K on all 4 HDMI ports, and some of them even offer up to 288Hz at 1080p. With Sony, you're still locked at 120Hz at 4K on 2 ports. But hey, you do you. In a world where so many top manufacturers are dropping DTS audio support, Samsung, LG, it's refreshing to see Sony hold the course. Both models support Dolby and DTS formats, good for cinephiles with extensive Blu-ray collections. Now, let's do a quick market check before jumping into the verdict. It's currently summer of 2025. It is extremely hot outside, extremely hot in this room, and you can probably tell. But there's no doubt about it, the BRAVIA 5 is way more expensive than the X90L. We're talking twice as expensive in some sizes here. The X90L, now deeply discounted, delivers stronger HDR highlights, brighter SDR performance, and excellent color accuracy, at a lower street price. Ouch. So, which TV should you get? Not really a tough decision. For almost all buyers, the Sony X90L is the smarter and better pick. It's brighter in HDR and SDR output, combined with stellar color accuracy, wider HDR color volume, and balanced, if still kind of bad gaming performance, offers more bang for your buck. The BRAVIA 5's mini LED backlight and updated styling are nice perks, sure, but its noticeably worse brightness than its predecessor really holds it back. Hunt down an X90L and don't look back. That wraps up our comparison of the Sony BRAVIA 5 and the Sony X90L. Which Sony will you choose? Let us know in the comments. Until next time, I'm Marco from Ratings.com, where we help you find the best products for your needs. In practice, this delivers